The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like dying wasps, casting their sterile glow across the hospital's main corridor. Outside, autumn rain drummed against tall windows, each droplet racing downward like tears on glass. The scent of antiseptic couldn't quite mask the underlying smell of human fear and grief that seemed to seep from the very walls. Major padded through the automatic doors, his dark coat glistening with rainwater. The retired German shepherd moved with purpose despite the slight limp in his left rear leg, a souvenir from his final tour overseas. Between his powerful jaws, he carried something that made the receptionist's breath catch in her throat. Bronze Star Medal, its ribbon still pristine despite being dampened by rain and saliva. "Oh my God," whispered Nancy, the evening shift supervisor, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. She'd worked at Veterans Memorial Hospital for 15 years, but she'd never seen anything like this. The dog's amber eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost human, a depth of understanding that made her skin prickle with unease. Major's ears swiveled at the sound of approaching footsteps. Dr. Harrison emerged from the elevator, his white coat wrinkled from another 18-hour shift. The moment he saw the dog, his face went ashen. His coffee cup slipped from trembling fingers, shattering against the polished floor in an explosion of ceramic and dark liquid. The dog didn't flinch at the sound. Instead, Major's gaze fixed on the doctor with laser focus, his tail rigid, body coiled like a spring. A low whine escaped his throat, not aggressive, but mournful, as if he were grieving something only he could understand. Where did he come from? Dr. Harrison's voice cracked like autumn leaves. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the hospital's cool temperature. His hands shook as he reached for the wall, needing support. Nancy glanced at the security monitors, her brow furrowed. He just walked in through the main entrance. No owner, no leash, just ... appeared with that medal. The bronze star caught the harsh fluorescent light, its surface gleaming like a small sun. Major held it carefully, as if it were made of spun glass rather than bronze and ribbon. His breathing was measured, controlled, the breathing of a trained soldier who had learned patience in the face of chaos. Around them, the hospital's evening rhythm began to falter. Nurses paused in their rounds, visitors stopped mid-conversation, and even the soft beeping of monitors seemed to quiet. There was something electric in the air, a tension that made everyone's nerves sing like tuning forks. Dr. Harrison took a step backward, his shoes squeaking against the wet floor. I need to make a phone call." His voice was barely above a whisper, but in the sudden hush, it carried like a shout. Outside, the storm was intensifying. Thunder rolled across the darkening sky like artillery fire, and the wind pressed against the building with increasing fury. Street lights flickered, casting intermittent shadows that danced across the hospital's walls like restless spirits. Major remained perfectly still, a statue carved from loyalty and determination. The metal in his mouth caught each flicker of light, casting brief rainbows across his dark muzzle. His eyes never left Dr. Harrison's face, watching every micro-expression, every nervous twitch, every sign of the fear that was slowly consuming the man in the white coat. The automatic doors whispered open as more staff members arrived for the night shift, but they stopped short when they saw the scene unfolding in the lobby. Word spread in hushed whispers through the corridors. A military dog had appeared with a bronze star, and Dr. Harrison looked like he'd seen a ghost. In the distance, a church bell tolled 8 times, its bronze voice carrying across the rain-soaked city. Each chime seemed to resonate in Major's chest, and with each one, his whine grew more insistent, more heartbroken. The metal trembled between his teeth, as if it were too heavy to hold, too important to release. Dr. Harrison's breathing became shallow, rapid. His face had gone from pale to gray, and his eyes darted toward the exit like a trapped animal seeking escape. But Major's presence seemed to pin him in place, an invisible weight that pressed down on his shoulders with the force of unspoken truth. The storm outside grew fiercer, and somewhere in the building's depths, a door slammed shut with the finality of judgment. The lobby had filled with an uncomfortable crowd: night shift nurses, security guards, a few late visitors who found themselves trapped in this strange tableau. They formed a loose circle around Major and the increasingly agitated Dr. Harrison, their whispered conversations creating a susurrus of unease that filled the space like fog. "Should we call animal control?" suggested Tom, the head of security, though his voice lacked conviction. There was something about the dog's bearing that commanded respect rather than fear, the unmistakable dignity of a decorated soldier who had earned his place through service and sacrifice. "No," Nancy said firmly, surprising herself with her certainty. "Look at him. He's not lost. He's here for a reason." Major's ears twitched at her words, and for a moment, his gaze shifted from Dr. Harrison to her face. In those amber depths, she saw something that made her heart skip recognition: gratitude and a profound sadness that seemed to echo through generations of military service. Dr. Harrison fumbled for his phone with shaking hands. "I need to. There's a patient I should check on." But his feet remained rooted to the spot, as if Major's presence had created some invisible barrier he couldn't cross. The dog took a single step forward, and the metal caught the light again. This time, Nancy could make out an inscription on the back, a name that she couldn't quite read from her position behind the reception desk. Major's tail gave the faintest wag, not of happiness but of encouragement, as if urging someone to look closer, to understand. "Dr. Harrison," came a voice from the elevator. Dr. Sarah Chun, the head of the psychiatric ward, approached with her usual calm demeanor, but even she slowed when she saw the scene. "Everything all right down here?" Harrison's laugh was sharp and brittle. "All right? There's a military dog in our lobby carrying a Bronze Star, and everyone's acting like it's perfectly normal." Dr. Chun studied Major with professional interest. She'd worked with many veterans, had seen the bonds they formed with their service animals. "He's trying to tell us something," she said quietly. "Service dogs don't typically carry medals unless ... She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. Major's whine intensified, and he took another step toward Dr. Harrison, who pressed himself against the wall as if trying to disappear into the painted drywall. "Unless what?" Nancy asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Dr. Chun knelt down slowly, extending her hand toward Major. The dog considered her for a long moment before allowing her to approach. With infinite gentleness, he lowered his head and released the metal into her palm. The bronze was warm, heated by the dog's breath and body temperature. Dr. Chun turned it over, and her face went white as she read the inscription on the back. "Sergeant Marcus Webb, Bronze Star, Afghanistan 2019, for gallantry in action." The name hit the assembled crowd like a physical blow. Several nurses gasped, and Tom, the security guard, took an involuntary step backward. They all knew that name. It was etched on a memorial plaque in the hospital's main corridor, along with 12 other local heroes who had given their lives in service to their country. "Marcus Webb died 4 years ago," Dr. Chun said, her voice barely audible. "IED explosion outside Kabul." Bull. Major's eyes fixed on Dr. Harrison again, and this time there was no mistaking the intelligence behind that gaze. It wasn't the look of a confused animal, it was the look of a witness, someone who had seen something that needed to be told, understood. ACKNOWLEDG. Dr. Harrison's breathing became erratic. Sweat stained his collar despite the hospital's efficient air conditioning. "This is ... This is impossible. Dogs don't. They can't." But Major's presence seemed to fill the space around them with an almost palpable weight of memory and unfinished business. The storm outside intensified, lightning illuminating the windows in stark white flashes that made everyone's faces look like photographs from another era. Where did you get this boy? Dr. Chun whispered, running her fingers along the ribbon. Major's tail gave the slightest wag, and he nudged her hand with his nose, then looked pointedly at Dr. Harrison. The connection was unmistakable, undeniable, and terrifying in its implications. The elevator chimed, and Detective Ray Cousins stepped into the lobby, his weathered face immediately taking in the unusual scene. Nancy had called him 20 minutes ago, not because of any crime, but because something felt wrong in a way that couldn't be quantified or reported through normal channels. Cousins had worked with military dogs during his time in the Marines, and he recognized Major immediately. The dog's posture, his focused attention, the way he held himself despite obvious fatigue. This was a soldier on a mission, not a lost pet. "Major," Cousins said quietly, and the dog's ears perked up at the sound of his name. "I heard you were looking for someone." Dr. Harrison's face had gone beyond pale into a sickly yellow pallor. "Detective, I don't know what this is about, but I have patients to attend to." "Dr. Harrison," Cousins interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of reading people's lies. "I think you should stay." Major here served 3 tours in Afghanistan with the 75th Ranger Regiment. His handler was Sergeant Marcus Webb. The name seemed to echo in the lobby's sudden silence. Even the storm outside appeared to pause, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Major approached Detective Cousins and sat at attention, his military training evident in every line of his body. The Bronze Star medal lay on the reception desk where Dr. Chun had placed it, its surface reflecting the overhead lights like a small beacon. "Marcus Webb was a good soldier," Cousins continued, his eyes never leaving Dr. Harrison's face. "Died heroically, according to all reports. His personal effects were sent home to his family, including this medal." He gestured to the Bronze Star. "So I'm curious, Doctor, how Major came to have it tonight." Dr. Harrison's hands were shaking so badly he had to clasp them behind his back. "I have no idea. I didn't know the soldier. This is the first time I've seen that dog." But Major's behavior suggested otherwise. The dog's gaze was fixed on Harrison with the intensity of a laser, and every few moments, he would emit a soft whine that sounded distinctly like mourning, not the mourning of loss, but the mourning of injustice. Dr. Chun picked up the medal again, studying it more closely. "Ray, there's something else. This medal. It's not a replica or a memorial piece, it's the original. Look at the wear patterns, the slight tarnishing. This has been handled, worn, treasured." The implication sent a chill through the assembled crowd. If Marcus Webb had died in Afghanistan 4 years ago, how had his personal medal ended up in the mouth of his service dog in a hospital lobby in Ohio? Major stood and walked to the large windows overlooking the parking lot. Rain streaked the glass, creating distorted images of the world outside. The dog placed his front paws on the windowsill and stared out into the storm, his body language shifting from focused determination to profound sadness. "He's looking for something," Nancy whispered, "or someone." Dr. Harrison made a sudden movement toward the elevator, but Detective Cousins stepped casually into his path. "Doctor, I'm going to need to ask you a few questions. Privately." "This is harassment," Harrison protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I don't know anything about medals or dogs or dead soldiers." Major turned from the window, his amber eyes reflecting the lobby's fluorescent lights like twin flames. He walked directly to Dr. Harrison and sat down in front of him, close enough that the man could feel the dog's warm breath on his legs. The Bronze Star seemed to pulse with its own light on the reception desk. And somewhere in the building's depths, a heart monitor began beeping erratically, its rhythm matching the storm's thunder with uncanny precision. Dr. Chun's office had become an impromptu interrogation room. Through the window, Major could be seen in the lobby below, still maintaining his vigil by the reception desk. The bronze star lay under a desk lamp, its surface casting intricate shadows on the papers scattered around it. Detective Cousins sat across from Dr. Harrison, a thick file folder between them. The doctor's earlier composure had completely crumbled, leaving behind a man who looked like he hadn't slept in years. "Dr. Harrison," Cousins began, his voice deceptively gentle, "I've been making some calls. Turns out Marcus Webb didn't die in that IED explosion in Afghanistan." Harrison's face went white, then gray, then an unhealthy shade of green. His breathing became shallow and rapid, the breathing of a man on the edge of complete collapse. "According to military records I just accessed, Sergeant Webb was critically injured but survived. He was medevaced to a field hospital, then transferred stateside for extended medical care." Cousins leaned forward. "He was transferred here, to Veterans Memorial Hospital, 4 years ago." The storm outside seemed to intensify with each revelation. Lightning illuminated the office in stark white flashes, creating a strobing effect that made the scene feel surreal, otherworldly. "Major was retired from active duty due to PTSD following his handler's injury," Cousins continued. "He was supposed to be reunited with Webb once the sergeant recovered enough to care for him." Dr. Harrison's hands were trembling so violently he had to sit on them. I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything, Doctor. I'm stating facts." Cousins opened the file folder, revealing medical records, transfer documents, and several photographs. "Marcus Webb was your patient. He was recovering from severe traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures, and extensive shrapnel wounds. The prognosis was good, difficult recovery, but good." Through the office window, they could see Major in the lobby below. The dog had moved to the elevator bank and was staring at the numbers above the doors, as if waiting for someone to emerge. "He was getting better," Cousins said quietly. "The medical records show steady improvement over 6 months. Then suddenly complications. Infections that shouldn't have happened. Medications that caused unexpected reactions. A young soldier who should have recovered." He paused, letting the weight of unspoken words fill the room. "Didn't." Dr. Harrison's composure finally shattered completely. Tears streamed down his face, and his voice came out as a broken whisper. "You don't understand. He was suffering, the brain injury. He wasn't the same person. He couldn't speak properly, couldn't remember his own name half the time, so you decided to help him die?" "Die?" "I was helping him." Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. "Do you know what it's like to see a decorated war hero reduced to nothing? He couldn't feed himself, couldn't walk without assistance. His family had already started making funeral arrangements when he was first injured. They thought he was dead." Detective Cousins studied the broken man across from him. "His family thought he was dead because you told them he was dead. You falsified death certificates, didn't you? Made it easier to take care of the problem." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Outside, the storm reached its crescendo, wind howling around the building like the voices of the betrayed. "The medal," Cousins continued, "you kept it. Maybe as a trophy, maybe out of guilt, but somehow Major found it. Dogs don't forget, Doctor. They don't forget the people they love, and they don't forget injustice." Through the window, they watched as Major walked to the hospital's memorial wall. The dog sat before the plaque bearing Marcus Webb's name, his head tilted slightly as if listening to a voice only he could hear. "He's been coming here, hasn't he?" Cousins asked. "Major, he's been coming to this hospital, looking for his handler. The staff probably thought he was just a stray, chased him away. But he kept coming back because he knew. He knew Marcus was here, and then he knew Marcus was gone." Dr. Harrison buried his face in his hands. "I thought I was doing the right thing. The man was barely alive. The brain scans showed massive damage. He would never have been the same. That wasn't your decision to make." Below in the lobby, Major had returned to the reception desk. He picked up the bronze star in his mouth, carrying it with the same careful reverence he'd shown when he first arrived. Then he walked to the elevator and sat down, waiting. The numbers above the elevator began to light up in sequence. 102. 3. 4. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Major stepped inside as if he'd been waiting for this moment for 4 years. Detective Cousins and Dr. Harrison followed, the weight of revelation hanging between them like a shroud. 4th floor. Intensive care unit. The corridor stretched ahead of them, lined with rooms where the most critical patients fought their battles between life and death. Major padded down the hallway with purpose, his claws clicking softly against the polished linoleum. He stopped at room 412. The plaque beside the door read, "Private room, authorized personnel only." But there was no patient name listed. Dr. Harrison's breathing became ragged as Major sat down in front of the closed door, the bronze star still carefully held in his mouth. "Open it," Detective Cousins said quietly. "I can't, Dr. Harrison's voice failed him completely. Cousins reached for his radio. "This is Detective Cousins. I need a supervisor and the medical examiner at Veterans Memorial Hospital, 4th floor, room 412. Major's whine was soft, heartbroken, the sound of a soul recognizing loss while refusing to accept it. He pawed at the door gently, then looked up at the two men with eyes that held 4 years of searching, hoping, grieving. The door was unlocked. Detective Cousins pushed it open slowly, revealing a room that had been sealed for years. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light from the hallway, and the air carried the stale scent of disuse and secrets. On the bed lay the skeletal remains of what had once been a man. Faded hospital gowns, disconnected medical equipment, and beside the pillow, a small collection of personal items, a wallet, dog tags, and a framed photograph of Major in his military harness. Major entered the room and approached the bed with infinite gentleness. He placed the bronze star on the chest of his fallen handler, then lay down beside the bed, his head resting on his paws. Dr. Harrison collapsed into the single chair by the window. "I disconnected his life support 4 years ago. I told everyone he had died, filed the paperwork, had the body moved to this private room for processing. But then," his voice broke, "I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't sign the final forms. He just stayed here." The storm outside was beginning to subside, rain pattering more gently against the windows. In the quiet, they could hear Major's breathing, slow and steady, the breathing of a soldier who had finally completed his mission. His family grieved for him, Cousins said. They held a funeral with an empty coffin. They thought their son, their brother, was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. "I know," the words came out as a sob. "I know what I did. I've lived with it every day for 4 years. Every time I walked past that memorial plaque downstairs, every time I saw another veteran come through those doors." Major lifted his head and looked at Dr. Harrison with something that might have been forgiveness or might have been pity. Then he gently picked up the bronze star and carried it to the doctor, placing it at his feet. The gesture was unmistakable. "This was for you to make right." Detective Cousins was already on his phone, making the calls that would set in motion the complicated process of undoing 4 years of lies. The medical examiner, the military liaison, the family notifications, all the bureaucratic machinery that would finally give Marcus Webb the honor and rest he deserved. But in room 412, there was only silence and the soft sound of a dog's breathing. As Major kept his final vigil beside the soldier, he had never stopped searching for Doc. Dawn broke gray and gentle over the city, the storm having passed in the night like a fever breaking. The hospital's main lobby was crowded now with officials, family members, and military personnel, all drawn by the incredible story of the dog who had exposed a truth buried for 4 years. Major sat at attention beside Detective Cousins, his service dog training evident in every line of his posture. The Bronze Star had been carefully bagged as evidence, but its work was done. The medal had served its purpose as a key to unlock secrets that had festered in darkness for too long. Dr. Harrison was led away in handcuffs, his medical license suspended pending a full investigation. As he passed Major, the dog's tail moved slightly, not a wag of happiness, but acknowledgement. Justice was being served, and sometimes justice was enough. Marcus Webb's family had been notified. His parents, his sister, his young nephew who had never met his uncle but had grown up hearing stories of his heroism. They were all coming to finally bring their soldier home. The empty grave in Arlington would finally have its occupant, and the memorial plaque downstairs would be updated with the correct date of death. But the most important witness to these events was a retired German shepherd who had never given up hope. Dr. Chun approached Major with a leash and a new collar, a civilian collar, not military issue. "Major, I've spoken with Marcus's family. His sister Sarah wants to adopt you, if you're willing. She has a big yard, 2 kids who would love a dog, and she promises you'll never have to search for anyone again." Major's amber eyes studied her face for a long moment. Then he looked toward the elevator, toward the 4th floor where his handler's body was being prepared for its journey home. A soft whine escaped his throat, not of sadness now, but of completion. The automatic doors whispered open, and Sarah Webb entered with her children, a boy and girl who immediately knelt down as Major approached them. The resemblance to their uncle was unmistakable in their dark hair and serious eyes, but they had inherited something else too. The gentleness that comes from understanding loss. "Are you Major?" the little girl asked, extending her hand for him to sniff. "Uncle Marcus wrote about you in his letters. He said you were the bravest dog in the whole army." Major's tail wagged for the first time in 4 years, not the careful acknowledgement he'd shown Dr. Harrison, but a real joyful wag that seemed to light up his entire body. He allowed the children to pet him, their small hands gentle on his graying muzzle. Sarah Webb knelt beside them, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered to Major. "Thank you for finding him, for bringing him home." Outside, the sun had broken through the dispersing clouds, sending shafts of golden light through the hospital's tall windows. The morning shift was arriving, and the evening supernatural events were already becoming the stuff of legend. The story of the dog, who carried a medal and a mission that transcended death itself. Detective Cousins watched as the Webb family prepared to leave with Major. The dog looked back once at the memorial wall, at the plaque that would soon bear the correct story of Sergeant Marcus Webb's service and sacrifice. Then he walked toward the doors, toward sunlight and a new life with people who understood the weight of service and the value of loyalty. The Bronze Star would eventually be returned to the family, but Major had already claimed his reward, the knowledge that his handler would finally rest with honor, that the truth had been told, and that his years of faithful searching had not been in vain. As they walked out into the morning light, Major's limp was barely noticeable. His step was lighter, his head held high with the bearing of a soldier whose final mission had been completed with honor. Behind them, Veterans Memorial Hospital settled back into its routine of healing and hope, but the story of the dog who wouldn't give up would be told for generations, a reminder that loyalty transcends death. That truth will always find a way to surface, and that sometimes the most profound acts of heroism come from those who refuse to abandon their brothers, no matter how long the search, no matter how impossible the odds. In the distance, church bells chimed the hour, their bronze voices carrying across the city like a benediction, like a final salute to a soldier coming home. The story you've just read is fiction, but the truth it represents is very real. Every day, thousands of veterans struggle with invisible wounds, fight battles that continue long after they've left the battlefield, and sometimes face a system that fails to fully understand or support their needs. Our military working dogs. Serve alongside these heroes, forming bonds forged in danger and sealed with unwavering loyalty. These remarkable animals save countless lives through their service, yet too many are abandoned when their useful years are over. Major's fictional journey reminds us that the bonds between soldiers, human and canine, transcend duty and speak to something deeper in the human spirit. If this story moved you, consider supporting organizations that help veterans and retired military working dogs. The real heroes don't ask for much: proper medical care, respect for their service, and the knowledge that their sacrifices haven't been forgotten. They deserve our attention not just in stories, but in the policies we support, the programs we fund, and the simple act of saying thank you when we meet them in our communities. Veterans, struggles don't end when they come home, they often just begin. PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, and the challenge of reintegrating into civilian life are battles that require our ongoing support. Similarly, military working dogs face retirement without the support systems that human soldiers receive, despite their years of faithful service. The next time you see a veteran, take a moment to acknowledge their service. Support legislation that improves veteran health care and benefits. Consider volunteering with organizations that help retired military working dogs find loving homes. Remember that behind every uniform and every service dog's harness is a story of sacrifice that deserves our respect and support. In a world that often seems divided, the bond between a soldier and their dog reminds us of what's possible when loyalty, courage, and love transcend all barriers. Major's story may be fiction, but the values it represents, duty, honor, and never leaving a brother behind, are as real as the men and women who serve our country every day.